Good evening and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. Got a lot to talk about tonight. I'll wait for seconds for you all to get the stream and then I'm going to start chatting. So, we're going to talk about Syria this evening. And we're going to talk about the end of the year. Because there will be no stream on Monday night. Sorry. New Year's Eve. Actually going to do something sociable. Supposed to be sociable with y'all. Going to be sociable in real life with real people. Or at least face to face. Physical presence people, not digital presence people. There. All right. So I hope I see some old faces in the audience I haven't seen for a little while. I hope y'all had a good holiday. I know I did. I have to hats off to Camille. She freaking killed it with Christmas Eve and Christmas dinner. I'm still like recovering from how good it was. I couldn't have asked for a better piece of prime rib. I couldn't have ordered a better piece of prime rib at the best restaurant. It was that good. Sometimes good to be the king. All right. Let's talk Syria, because it's important. I did a short Periscope this morning on this, and we're going to expound on some of these ideas. We're going to go over some of what's happening, what I think is happening, what's going on. So, with Trump's announced pullout from Syria and supposedly from Afghanistan as well, both of which are unqualified good things. More of that, Don. Less Twitter nonsense. The big worry now is the power vacuum that we leave behind, right? Trump complained on the campaign trail that pulling out of Iraq, supposedly the way we did under Obama, was bad because it was the wrong way to do things. And now he's going to pull out of Syria in supposedly much the same way. Correct? Just to pull everybody out in 60 days. He wanted to pull these people out a long time ago. So here's the reality, right? The reality is I was watching Jim Jatras on RT earlier in the day, and he mentioned that it was high fantasy that the American political establishment, media, and everybody are all trying to paint Trump as being reckless for pulling out of Syria the way he's talking about it, because apparently he was convinced by Turkish President Erdogan that they've got ISIS covered, don't worry about it. That's complete rotten nonsense. The Syrian Arab Army, the Russian Air Force, Hezbollah, and Iran and Iraq, popular mobilization units, by the way, from Iraq, have moved into southern Syria as well. They have ISIS covered. And the minute we move out of there, they're going to get slaughtered. And Trump has to know this. He can dog whistle all he wants that this is going to be for the Turks, but everybody knows that this is that those guys will destroy what's left of ISIS. So now the question is, what side are the Turks playing? What game is Erdogan playing? Is he playing a deeper game than what we think? Well, here's the gig. As far as I'm concerned, Erdogan switched sides in the civil war thing the day after the CIA or somebody created a false flag incident and shot down a Russian Su-24 west of Aleppo. You remember back in November of 2015. I've talked about this multiple times in the past. I'm going to talk about it again for those of you who are new. What's important to understand here is that Erdogan in November of 2015 was being set up as the scapegoat for the quagmire in Syria. The Russians moving in on September 30th immediately blew open all of the narratives about how ISIS was undefeatable and we need to send more troops and we need to do this and we need to have a grand coalition of the willing to come in and wipe them out, when the truth of the matter is that we were dropping bombs in the middle of the fucking desert doing nothing, letting ISIS run wild. And it was Putin who took Obama's offer to come in and help clean up ISIS. That started cleaning up ISIS. And the Russians immediately provided air support, competent air support, and turned the tide of the war within 48 hours. Okay. So, and if you remember at that time, Erdogan's son was outed as the one who was selling all of the oil that ISIS was smuggling out of Syria. So that was the situation November 2015. And then, there's the Russian stock market making I remember this like it was yesterday. The Russian stock market, I wake up that morning, the Russian stock market's at an all-time high, breaking through a 4-year high. And literally within 5 minutes, there was the news wire that came across the news wire that the Turks had shot down an Su-24. The Russian stock market literally dumped like 150 points or 100 points in like that. And everything changed. Because everybody expected everybody expected some kind of shooting war between Russia and Turkey now. It was not going to happen. And of course, Turkey being a U.S. ally, NATO ally, meant that would be our casus belli to get NATO to enter into Syria, and blah, blah, blah. And then nothing happened. Putin held his water. Erdogan very quickly after that opened up back-channel communications to Assad, realizing that he was going to be set up as the scapegoat for everything going bad in Syria, and started changing sides. 6 months later, or 7 months later, we tried to have him overthrown. Putin saves his life by giving him the early warning signal that what was happening, and the rest is history. According to Sterling, who's not here tonight, Erdogan was Apple FaceTiming his call to action from a bunker inside Iran. I'm not sure how much I believe that, but, salt that information to taste. And everything else after that, everything else since then has been a stepwise disengagement of the Turks from the quagmire the U.S. has put them in. And Erdogan at that moment realized he had all the leverage over the U.S. because he was a NATO ally and they couldn't do anything with him. Putin is unbelievably patient, Libertarian. Because if he wasn't unbelievably patient, we would have already had World War III. Okay. So fast forward to today. Now the big question is, Trump makes his deal with Erdogan, and I don't buy the dominant narrative. The dominant narrative being that Turkey is now going to move into Manbij and is going to start slaughtering the Kurds and all of this stuff. None of that has happened. What happened here, and I'll tell you exactly what happened here. Erdogan ran his last bluff on Trump. Which is, Erdogan wanted the United States and the Kurds separated. The best way to do that, remember, all this happened at the same weekend. The best way to do that is to threaten Trump with invading from the west of Manbij, pushing west from Afrin towards Manbij, and entering northern Iraq at the same time and pressuring from the other side. And they were going to pop Manbij like a zit. And either the U.S. would have to start firing on the Turkish army, or we would have to leave. That was what was happening. This was all reported in the news. You can go look this stuff up. Turkey is nobody's ally, RB Tools. I hear what you're saying. But trust me on this one, this is what went down. Because somehow Erdogan has been given the green light to take Manbij, but the Syrian army is already there. The way you separate the U.S. from the Kurds is to push as hard as possible and just say, look, we're done with this. We're moving in if you don't do something about this. And Trump says, okay, that's enough. Enough is enough. This has gotten intolerable. Trump had to choose between his quote-unquote alliance with the Kurds and his NATO ally, Turkey, who's far more important geopolitically. And Erdogan put him in that position, and Putin put him in that position, and Assad put him in that position. And this was always this was always going to end this way. A year and a half ago, the Syrian government, the Assad government, opened up diplomatic channels with the Syrian Democratic Council, offering them full autonomy within the territory of Syria, as long as Syria was made whole. Kurds turned him down. Jim Jatras just mentioned this on RT 4 hours ago. And that put them in the position now where they were never going to get a better deal than what they got from Assad. Now, today, Assad is going to make them is going to make them pay far harder price than they would have paid a year ago. But at the same time, Erdogan wants parts of northern Syria. And that's what's in the Kurds' back pocket. And Putin is not going to allow Erdogan to run roughshod over anybody. And that's that. And all of this will end. Because, look, if you think that Erdogan is going to take serious territory in Syria and start slaughtering Kurds when everybody knows that that's exactly what no one wants to have happen, when Trump just gave Erdogan everything he wanted, and then Erdogan's going to turn around and screw Trump over, doesn't make any sense. Aside from the fact that the Chinese and the Russians at that point will pull all support from Turkey economically, and in the Forex markets, and the lira will blow the fuck right back up again. It'll be sitting there at a 7 or 7.5 to the dollar, and Erdogan will be deposed from power when the whole fucking country goes into hyperinflation. So don't think for a moment that Erdogan is going to, double cross anybody or triple cross anybody here, because it's not going to happen. The SAA will move into Manbij. They will beat the Turks there, and that will be the end of it. At Manbij. And then everything else after that is a stepwise disengagement. This weekend, everything will get resolved. Erdogan is going to Moscow to meet with Putin. The Russian, there's going to be a 2+2 meeting between the Russians and Assad, and the Egyptians have been asked by the Kurds to show up at a meeting to work all this shit out. Make Turkey Armenia again. Oh, I know. So that's all happening this weekend. Putin will lay down the law with Erdogan. Erdogan hasn't made a move without Putin's approval in the last 2 years. And that's what's got everybody on the U.S. side of things so pissed off. Because they realize that Erdogan has all the leverage in this. And I've been saying this for 2 years now. Erdogan has all the leverage in this. If Erdogan hadn't changed sides, he would have never allowed the SAA and the Russians to retake Aleppo, for fuck's sake, no less the rest of the country. He's still trying to mostly protect his pets in Idlib. And that's the sticking point. Because what he doesn't want those guys then moving back into Turkey and causing havoc in Turkey. Even though this is his mess. Even though it's a mess that he created. Everybody else will have to clean it up. So if he wants that cleaned up in a way that doesn't make things awful for him, he's going to cede Manbij and Afrin and everything else. And over the course of the next year, it's going to take a while. He's not going to leave Syria tomorrow. But it'll happen over time as the Americans pull out, as the political process moves forward in Syria. Remember, Erdogan and Turkey are now part of the Astana process. All the pieces are in place. There's no reason to believe anything else is going to happen here. All that had to happen was the U.S. had to pull out. U.S. pulls out of Syria, everything resolves itself. And then the only wild card left truly are the Israelis. And that's a wild card. Because once we move out of Al-Tanf, the Russians, the Syrians, and the Iranian militias are all stationed right along the edge of that area, nominally controlled by the U.S. at this point. The minute we pull out, those guys get wiped out. If Turkey wants a future, it'll happen. Yes, Erdogan did play his cards beautifully, but he can't overplay them. And overplaying them would be trying to hold on to territory in Syria. It will put him in a very, very bad position. No one wants him to take large swaths of Syria. Not the United States, not Russia, not Assad, not Lebanon, not Europe. Making war on Greece. He's threatening war on Greece and Cyprus as well. He's going to continue to play this game where he's going to occupy without actually annexing and all of this stuff. But it won't work. Long term, it won't work. Will not work. He wants the Kurds neutered. He'll have the Kurds neutered. Because the Russians are going to guarantee it. Because the Russians aren't leaving Syria anytime soon. Because no peace process in Syria is meaningful without the Russians being the guarantor. That's just the way it is. I've been talking about a grand bargain in the Middle East for a long time. My version of the grand bargain looks a lot closer to what's actually going to happen than what Trump thought he was going to be able to get away with. The U.S. is going to pull out, but for all intents and purposes, will act as the guarantor of Israel and Saudi Arabia's behavior. Both the Russians and the United States are willing to back MBS in the future in Saudi Arabia, so there's that. Netanyahu is on thin ice politically, is calling for snap elections, dissolved parliament, and called for snap elections. So he's got to look strong here. So lobbing some bombs at Syria right now before the S-300s are fully operational or the crews are fully trained in such a way that he doesn't gain much, but he doesn't lose much either. It's all just a show for kabuki theater for the domestic Israeli consumption. The U.S.-Israeli nexus is a big deal. Erdogan wants to be the leader of the Sunni world. If the Saudis are neutered by losing abjectly in Syria and probably losing in Yemen as well, Erdogan is happy. Because Erdogan can then move Turkey back into the position of being the leader of the Sunni world and not the Saudis. And that will be enough for him. He won't need territory. Will they try and push? Will they try and push U.S. intelligence? Try and push Trump back into Syria? Dude, they're gonna try and get rid of Trump before he fully pulls out of Syria and Afghanistan. I know all about Genie Energy, Tom. I'm not talking about Syria get taken back to Golan Heights anytime soon. The Russians will look the other way about a gas pipeline across the Mediterranean from Israel to Italy. Hideously expensive. But it won't be competitive with Nord Stream 2 or Turk Stream, but it'll get built. Well, Cube Dog, I think that Israel already tried that the other day. It didn't really do anything. If the Russians didn't respond to the blatant aggression from shooting down that IL-20 reconnaissance plane, and they didn't respond to everything else, to the wiping out of Russian contractors and crossing the Euphrates River near Deir ez-Zor last year, and if the Russians didn't respond to the Su-24, what could Israel possibly do to get Putin to respond in a way that would get NATO to show up, that would justify NATO moving back in? Israel's not that powerful. They really are that yip dog next to that Walter carries around in The Big Lebowski. Russians haven't taken the bait yet. They're not going to. They know Netanyahu's game. They know what our game is. And they know that time is on their side. And the longer they try to hold on to what they have in Syria, the more they will lose. This is why I was so fucking angry with Trump for bombing al-Sharat a year and a half ago in April of 2017. I saw it then as the dumbest move imaginable. I said, dude, you're now making it harder for yourself. You're going to wind up with less control over how this plays out than you could ever ask for. You're going to wind up with less. Putin is going to continue to extract more from you. And he's good. The war of attrition will work in Assad and Putin's and the Chinese favor. And Iran's favor. It will. They're bleeding you politically, economically, diplomatically, and in every way. So, yeah. So, I'm not that worried about Putin making a mistake here. The Israelis were hoping for a few pilots to be shot down by S-300s, hence the provocation. What better way to keep the U.S. in the quagmire than to parade a few dead chosen ones, RB Tool. They've really lost their mind since they lost one of their planes earlier in the year. One of their planes was shot down by an S-200, for Christ's sake. The only thing the Israelis have going for them militarily is the quote-unquote invulnerability or the massive advantage they have in air superiority in the region. That's it. Everything else, no. They're surrounded on all sides. And I've been saying this for a long time. As much I give Israel shit all the time. I give Israel shit all the time because they don't play their cards well. Because they think soft power is real power when it's not. Real power is a billion freaking people who want to kill them. That's real power. It's not having control of the media and having soft power in the White House. Joanne Leone. Good evening, Joanne. By the way, your podcast with with Elijah Magnier was fantastic. It was good to hear somebody else just saying everything that I thought was going on and more. It was really, really good to have his great show. If you guys haven't listen to Joanne's Around the Empire podcast, especially the recent episode with Elijah Magnier. I absolutely recommend it. All right. We're going to find out real soon how much control Erdogan has over his rebel proxies who are now amassing at the gate of Manbij. Wonder what he promised them. Yeah. He doesn't have... I just don't see the Russians and the Syrians putting up with any of that bullshit. I really don't. Now, he was able to broker a ceasefire, the DMZ deal in Idlib, to protect them, hoping that there was going to be some more concessions that he could get out of the Americans, and he did. He played for time and got Khashoggi, which led to the cabinet shuffle in Saudi Arabia, which led to Saudi Arabia's having to pull back on just about everything. It's all good for him. What's the deal with Erdogan buying both Patriot and S-400 systems? Erdogan's going to buy what weapons he needs to in order to stay in power. Remember, he's trying to carve an independent Turkey here. He is. One that is nominally in NATO and also economically and diplomatically aligned with the SCO. Do I see peace in the Middle East realistically? I see a bargain that will build a fragile peace. But the big thing, what's going to change the Middle East completely is going to be a demographic shift here in the United States. User 13 and I have been talking about this for a long time. How the generations coming behind the baby boomers, and the baby boomers here, unfortunately, are still in power. But Gen X / millennials, they don't have the same loyalty to Israel that the baby boomers have and the silent generation has. Don't. So once Trump's generation is gone from the bureaucracy and the power, which could take another 10 or 15, it could take another 10 years to really make that shift. That's when we're going to see a fundamental shift in American policy towards Israel. And I think that Netanyahu understands this now, but he's just refusing. He's trying to get everything he can now before he loses that soft power support. The problem is that the way he's playing his cards, he's going to lose everything. Joanne Leon, by flying Israeli fighter jets in front of civilian airliners, obviously they were hoping Syrian missile defense would take down a commercial jet. I know. It was insane. I mean, it was absolutely and utterly insane what these people were willing to do to try and start a war. I agree. Israel needs to stop attempting to kill innocent people. Full stop. They have to stop trying to. Netanyahu has to stop trying to provoke a freaking wider war. He keeps thinking that if he can just get the right set of circumstances, then he can wag the dog and bring in NATO. And this is the third time he's tried something really dangerous in the last 4 months. That speaks of abject desperation. And guess who's sitting back and laughing at him? At him. You know who's laughing at him? Because they keep outplaying the uber smart Israelis. You know who's laughing their asses off right now? Queen to Bishop 4. The Iranians. Iranians are laughing right now because everything is going wrong for the Israelis here. And again, I don't want to see any of this. I don't want to see any of this end in violence. I don't want to see Israel wiped out. I don't want to see a rise in anti-Semitism. I don't want to see any of this stuff. But the Israelis have, especially Netanyahu, have to understand that the more they act the way they're acting, the more they're recruiting people into the alt-right every day. Netanyahu is the best recruiter the alt-right has. It's insane. And he refuses to see it. He is who he is. And until he's removed from the scene, nothing's going to change. Yes, Tom. They did the exact same thing with commercial airliners that they did with the Russian recon plane. Except this time, they didn't have French frigates firing missiles to blow the frickin' planes up. Because that's what happened. Yeah, Rocket Man, you wish Rand Paul ran for president in 2024. I don't know that this country is ready for Rand. I wish they were, but I don't think so. I know. Joanne, you're absolutely right. Erdogan is in a strong position if he would just get over his Kurdish obsession and get out of Syria. I know. He's in a perfect position to get everything he wants. Energy independence by brokering deals with the Russians to build in nuclear power plants and pipelines and all of that. Shore up. Turkey's biggest problem is that they don't produce any of their own energy. They're a massive energy importer. It puts them in a real fundamental strategic disadvantage. He's got all the right friends, and all he has to do is keep his dick in his pants. Everybody needs to look at the game board and go, yep, that's good enough. Know that they can. All left, like Richard Spencer, exactly. I mean, I'm serious when I say this. It's important to remember that these men are who they are, right? Trump's got his personality defects. Netanyahu has his. Erdogan has his. Assad has his. Putin has his, right? What I miss about half an hour of really detailed talk on what's going on in Syria. I can't let me sum up. No, there is too much. Buttercup is marrying Humperdinck in a little less than half. All right. But now we're in the position of, once it's established that the Syrian army is going to control the Kurds, push them back, make peace with the Syrian Democratic Council, make peace with them. Look, you got to remember, the Kurdish position was over the day Barzani's Peshmerga were wiped out at Erbil. Okay? Let's go back, right, to late last year. Really important to understand that. The whole idea of Greater Kurdistan and carving out pieces of Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria into Greater Kurdistan, which the U.S. could control, which that was the plan, guys, failed when Barzani's Peshmerga got wiped out at Erbil. Like, they weren't even there. And they had been built up, and they had been built up in the press that they were this big, nasty fighting force, and they literally got wiped out by the Iraqi PMU, a militia. And that was that. There was no way you were going to be able to create a transnational Kurdish army, military, that would be capable of brokering, that kind of deal. And so this has all just been rearguard action since then. Right? Yeah, the PMU just rolled them like they weren't even there. It was embarrassing. Honestly. It was embarrassing. And now the PMU is moving into southern Syria. They're putting pressure on the Kurds into southern Syria. So when we move out, the border crossing in Al Tanf gets taken in a week, maybe 3 days. Okay? The ease with which the Russians and the Syrian Arab army have wiped out so many of these militia groups. Okay? So many of these groups. Raqqa, it's not Raqqa. But, the only real difficult one was Aleppo. But all of that around Homs and Ghouta and into Daraa and all of these places, Palmyra, all these places, the Syrians just rolled them like they weren't even there, because the minute the U.S. stopped backing them substantively, and we knew Trump was going to eventually pull this off, because he very quietly behind the scenes, we withdrew our support of the rebels in Daraa, south of Damascus, between Damascus and the Golan Heights, earlier this year. And it was all supposed to be a freaking bloodbath, and it was going to be a quagmire, and it was going to take months. It's always wrong. They're always wrong. I mean, I said this in September 2015, 5 days before Putin moved into to Russia. I said, come on. I told my editor at Newsmax, I said, don't even think about this. When Putin moves in, it's going to be, within 3 weeks, he'll have this thing under control and completely reversed, because ISIS is a paper tiger that we've been protecting. We've been acting as their air force along with the Israelis, because the whole point of this is for us to overthrow the Assad government. She just looked at me like I have 4 heads and said, that's the craziest shit I ever heard. Then we got together for the next issue of the newsletter for Had Our Planning Call, and she's like, oh my God, Tom, you were absolutely right. I'm like, I know! Never doubt me! Like, a bunch of freaking guys in Toyota pickup trucks, the Russian Air Force! Don't believe everything you read in The Guardian. Yeah, Al-Tanf will fall in like 2 hours. Yeah, the RB2s, you're absolutely right. The speed with which the Russians turned the tide was unbelievable. What those guys did, I mean, I've talked about this before. They're going to write military textbooks on the Russian Air Force's operations in Syria. They were turning those planes over 6 to 10 times a day. I think it was like 6 times a day. They only had like 30 planes. They were running over 100. There's like 120. They had like 30 planes total. And I remember reading something that the Saker put out about just the sheer number of sorties that they were running was ridiculous. The logistical, it was a logistical miracle. And it just proves to you just how well trained the Russian forces are that Putin sent into Syria. Now, they didn't have any opposition. All you had to do is get the planes up there, fly the friggin' sorties, fly them back, refuel them, get the pilots ready to go, and get them out there, reload them, and get them out there again. They were just crushing it. Yeah, you guys, the more I hear Mark Bogosian's story, oh my God. FYI, Mark Bogosian said, I was on Rand Paul's finance committee and I got audited 14 times in 3 years. Yes, all from one rapidly assembled airbase the Russians pulled off with a small number of planes. It was very few. The difference between Russian forces and Americans is the operational ability. Russian weapons are far more durable and dependable. You're absolutely right, Stoyanovich. It's crazy. You know, it really is. The AK-47. When you absolutely, positively have to kill every motherfucker in the room, except no substitute. Best line in Jackie Brown. I've owned an AK. Well, a Romanian SAR-1, which is stamped receiver semi-automatic version of an AK-47. And I can tell you, yeah. There ain't no precision there, boys. It just goes bang. No matter what happens. It just goes bang. And if you actually pulled one apart and looked at it, you realize why. It literally is like $10 worth of freaking metal. It's unbelievable. The receiver itself is ridiculous. The hammer is this like big, like this big hunk of T-shaped metal. This bath. It hits the back of the friggin'. It's the whole back of the shell to make sure that it fires. There's none of this precision pin shit or no precision there. Whack. You know, it's this big friggin' spring. It's wound with a big friggin' spring. The whole thing it's just ridiculous. It's unbelievable. Because Americans build weapons for profit, the Russians build them to work. No, and because the Russians build them to work and they're so friggin' cheap, guess what? Profit. Because it's all about cost-benefit analysis. Well, in a video game, everything shoots well. In the real world, truthfully, so that Romanian SAR-1, I mean, I can't speak for a higher quality AKs, okay, but those chrome line barrels, they heat up. They're not terribly accurate, but they don't foul, right? Or they foul a little bit, but they're not. You can shoot cheap corrosive ammo through them because they're lined with chrome. It doesn't make them particularly accurate, okay. But they weren't meant to be accurate. They were in the hands of infantry, and infantry don't know how to fucking shoot in the first place. When this thing was designed in the 40s, infantry was not meant to actually kill anything. It was just meant to suppressing fire. And it's an urban combat weapon. All right, and don't get me wrong. I'm being facetious. I'm simplifying to be facetious. But having shot hundreds of rounds through that AK that I owned, and I have an SKSM now as opposed to AK. I can tell you that after about the first, I sighted in at about 75 yards, and it was relatively accurate. I'm a terrible rifle shot, so it was reasonably accurate. Couple MOA, 1 MOA at 75 yards, maybe 1.5 MOA, about 2 MOA at 75 yards. It's fine. It's good enough for what you need it to be, which is point center mass, and you might hit something, and you should hit something. Good. But after about 30 rounds, I couldn't hit the paper because the barrel got so hot, it would just whip the bullets everywhere. You literally needed 6 of these things. So while you could shoot one while the other 5 were, you're shooting this one, and then you let that one cool down, you pick up the next one, you shoot that one, and then you keep going because that's what you had to do. So, Israel hit Damascus recently for show, political purposes. Netanyahu wants to get reelected. So, I still want to know where all the ISIS Toyota pickup trucks came from. Did we ever get that info exactly? No idea. Russia has a GDP the size of Italy, right? How do they punch above their weight? Honest question. Well, when you measure it in dollars, yeah. When you measure it in constant dollar purchasing power parity, it's it's bigger than Germany's. That's what you have to remember. Okay, is that when you measure something in dollars, it doesn't mean anything because a dollar goes far farther in Russia than it does here in the United States. So, to say the average Russian lives on, 25 grand a year or whatever is, or 12 grand a year is nothing. It's in purchasing power parity. That 40,000 rubles or whatever it is that they earn, what does that translate into, right? In terms of actual purchasing power, actual purchasing power. That's what's important. Okay, that's what determines whether or not. That's what really determines the real effective GDP of the country. I think I just hit zero hedge. My phone is making way too much. Just shut up. So that's why. Okay. Designers are not involved in. So the Russian government owns defense bureaus and then assigns the building of the products to bidders after they are fully tested. The designers are not involved in production. Yeah, no, none of that is ever mentioned. People never want to discuss this. They always say, they got the GDP of Canada. They're irrelevant. I'm like, no, they're not. And that's ridiculous. The Russians only spend, $40 billion a year on defense. Yeah, it's the equivalent of, $150 billion in, constant dollar purchasing power parity. Yeah. Good for them. So, yeah. In McCarthy's defense, there were actual communists within our government, and he was right to be trying to sort them out. But he gets to be the face of it. He gets to be the Nazi. So, all right. See what else we got. All right, about 45 minutes. We got anything else you guys want to talk about tonight? So, been a hell of a 2018. I think 2019 is going to be even weirder. We'll end on this. We had a major acceleration of the speed of events in 2018. A lot happened this year. A lot more happened this year than happened in 2017. And we're going to see more of this as we accelerate towards the event horizon, which is most likely the European sovereign debt crisis. I know there are still commies in Congress. Jesus Christ, they're called Democrats. And they're called neocons. They're just commies that don't realize they're commies. What's this were, Green Penguin? There are more commies in the media than there are in government. So the stock market is going to do what? Asked Chris from Wisconsin. Likely still very choppy, depending on how we close the year on Monday, coming into January. But oh, sorry, that was, dude. I'm a libertarian. Everybody's a fucking commie. What are you, a commie? I don't want no commies in my car. No Christians either. Repo Man. All right. The stock market will do what the stock market will not do what the Fed wants it to do. The Fed is not in control of anything. The Eurodollar markets are. Don't listen to. Don't get caught up in that. If we have a sovereign debt crisis happen in Europe, and Trump keeps his dick in his pants, this is going to be the hard part. That means you tone it down. You tone down the trade war rhetoric. You stop sanctioning everybody who looks at you cross-eyed. You start giving the market something approaching normalcy and consistency. The market wants consistency. The market wants to know what it thinks is going to happen next. It wants some level of, it doesn't want any shocks. It doesn't want to wake up one morning and find out that the United States has banned all, 3/4 of the aluminum producers in the world. Okay? They don't want to know that. They don't want to have to scramble for fucking supply chains that are incredibly important to everybody. They don't want to do that. They don't want to deal with that shit. And Trump did this crap all year long, and he finally got his fucking comeuppance this month, and he deserved every fucking bit of it. In fact, he probably deserved another 2,000 points shaved off the Dow. Because when you invite chaos by thinking that you can just walk into a fucking room, walk into a trade negotiation with China and start treating them like they're a concrete contractor, because, China is just interchangeable with any other fucking concrete contractor that Trump can get it to build his buildings in New York. And there's 20 guys who want his business, and 19 of them don't fucking matter. Got news for you. You don't treat China that way, and you don't treat global capital that way. And that's the lesson he had to learn. If he keeps his dick in his pants and he starts truly trying to make the United States a destination for capital, not just by changing the laws and changing the regulations and changing the tax code, but you have to actually project stability. You've got to project competence. These are two things that he has not at all projected. Not since the day he took office. I have a plan. My plan is to piss everybody off. Well, got news for you, Don. They don't have to do business with you. And he still thinks that the United States is the indispensable country in the world that everybody has to do business with. Bullshit. We don't. So, if he's finally learned his lesson, then when Europe starts to break down, and people start to really look at how bad Europe is in, that's when you can see the capital flooded back into the United States. So that's what you're looking for in 2019. And if the Democrats and the political elite continue to try and create chaos here in the United States, and Trump keeps falling for it because he's Donald Trump and he can't handle the fucking criticism, then he might actually let the Europeans off the hook for an extra 6 months or so. Wife calls me a commie. Nice. All right, let's see. So there's my rant about that. You know, some of the guys on that that Zero Hedge, guys like Brandon Smith at Alt Market and some others. I shouldn't talk bad about them. They're good. They mean well. I just think they're a little loony. Because really, some of the stuff about how much control the Fed has and what the bankers' real plan is and all of this stuff. Sense. They have a general idea of what they think is going to happen and what they want to have happen. But it's like backfilling in that Trump has a plan and everything he's doing. He doesn't. He's making this shit up as he goes. And most of the time, so are the fucking global elites. They're making this shit up as they go. Watch, 2019, big prediction for 2019, Goldman Sachs will be in serious fucking trouble. Legally. And the rest of the banking sector will go after them. Who wins Syria now? Syria. Everything else doesn't matter. All the other players that are on Syria's side in this are there because we started the fucking problem. So if we pull out, and all the minor players, the Israelis, the Saudis, the Turks, the Qataris, the Emiratis, all those people, they all have to go back fucking home, lick their wounds. And they will. And they already have. So many of them already have. Shame I'm a libertarian? No, it's actually your problem, not mine. I'm the rational. I have no idea I didn't see anything about Japan changing tariff rates. I wouldn't. I don't know. I didn't see that. If Goldman Sachs is in trouble, it's a good thing Trump got rid of Gary Cohn. Yeah, why is Steve Mnuchin still there? Goldman is in trouble because they've now pissed off governments, and governments are taking them to court. And there's not going to be any way for them to stop that process. And once that starts, the other banks will help overthrow Goldman because they all fucking hate Goldman as much as we do. Because not that any of them are any better. It's a bunch of fucking sharks. Yeah, rational libertarians. That's like, that's our biggest problem, is that we're too rational. That most of us are too rational, too logical, as opposed to being emotionally invested in what it is that they're actually arguing for. Problem. Libertarians tend to be better systemic thinkers than other people. Jonathan Haidt did a big, huge study on this. That's what makes us impenetrable for a lot of people. That's awesome. Large convoy of trucks wearing yellow vests making its way across Canada. Great. When Trump said buy the dip, he was so transparently an employee of Goldman. Yeah, that's sure. Fair enough. Oh, I think he should get rid of Mnuchin. That would be fantastic. Real libertarians look like me. There's a lot of fake libertarians. There's a lot of left libertarians that are just leftists. Truly do believe in open borders to a level that's not practical. But yeah, there's more infighting amongst libertarians than any other group. And there's a big difference between a libertarian and an objectivist, too, by the way. There's some crossover, but that crossover over time getting smaller and smaller. Because objectivists are fucking crazy. No offense to objectivists in the room, but you are. You're all fucking crazy. Then again, I think everybody else is crazy. A lot of fake libertarians. There's a lot of Republicans who don't want to pay taxes, and there's a lot of libs that just want to smoke pot. The Reason Magazine crowd are those guys. There are a lot of fake libertarians over at Cato because they're owned by the Koch brothers. Same thing with Reason Magazine. That crowd, they just want to smoke pot. The core of intellectual libertarianism today resides at the Mises Institute and around that circle. That's where it is. Well, actually, the banks want higher interest rates because they have no net interest income right now. Their net interest margin, their NIM, which is basically what a bank is supposed to be, what a bank's profit center is supposed to be, is in, net interest margin. They pay you X on your savings rate, and they lend your savings out at X plus 3%, and they make the that big. That's been ground to zero under ZERP. The banks are the ones screaming for higher interest rates so they can actually, make money the old-fashioned way. Holding on to people's money and then lending it out at a profit. Joanne, it's really simple. If you believe in the non-aggression principle, if you believe that using violence to achieve your social or political goals through aggressive use of force is immoral, you're a libertarian. The rest is just negotiation with yourself over all the individual issues. Problem with the non-aggression principle is that it leads you into some very, very ugly edge cases that makes it difficult to figure out where you are between your principles and your emotions. That's the hard part. Walking that walk and then fitting that into the world you live in. But the NAP should be your guiding light. ZERP is dead. That's why the banks want raising it. That's why the Fed's raising interest rates. You live and let live. You're really very close to that. The question is, at what point are you willing to use aggressive force to achieve that goal? Whatever your goal is. Small libertarian. Narco-capitalist. I don't give a shit what you call yourself. But from that, close. Again, read The Ethics of Liberty by Rothbard. He kind of lays it out really, really carefully. It does a really great job of laying it out that way. It's a great book for that. It's a great book for that. Yeah, I mean, it really is. It just is a brilliant way. It's just a brilliant thesis to explain it all. So, the big one is, but, once you do that, then you realize free market capitalism, taxation is theft, inviolate private property, open borders only because political borders shouldn't exist, but private property, but like the borders to outer Mongolia, no, protected by dogs and guns and fences. Dude, I have, I just don't really recognize any other border. Intellectually. Physically, in reality, practically, of course I do. Because some people are pointing guns at me to do so. Everybody's gun. All right. We're at an hour, almost exactly. Sounds good. Good place to stop. Guys, have a great weekend and have an even better New Year's. I'll try and pop in on Periscope a couple times between now and next Friday. It's been the Gold Goats and Guns Hour. Been a heck of a 2018. You guys take care. 2019 should be fun too. I could use a slow down the acceleration of the rate at which my hair is turning gray, though. That would be great. Other than that, can't really complain. You guys take care. You have a great weekend. Keep your stick on the ice.